So today's Dharma talk is taken from the topic, Drive All Blames into One, is taken from Atisha's 7 Points of Mind Training. And this particular section in those 59 slogans is changing bad circumstances into the path of Bodhi or awakening. So taking something difficult and fiddling with it a little bit. We're all dealing with some kind of blame going on all the time. Right? Who caused what? Who did what? Who's at fault? It's happens all the time in our minds, or if not there, out in conversations that we hear and so on. And so we're in this particular practice, we're not saying this isn't about the kind of blame where we're always thinking we're at fault, or we spontaneously, instead of allowing things to be just what they are, we immediately go into the more subtle form of egocentrism or belief in a separate self, which is thinking you're the blame for everything. It's just me. I can't help it. I'm just a general. What do they call that? Fool. No, another F word. So this practice is not so much about being a martyr. But it's about, it's very simple. It's about taking the knee-jerk action of ego to blame others, or as they did it, and turning it around so that you're taking the blame. This doesn't mean that obviously in your intelligence, you see that you did not forget to get gas at the gas station and run out of gas, where it causes a lot of inconvenience for your friends who have to come and get you, so on. So we're not saying that someone didn't actually do something that was caused of problems or was a mistake. It's just saying that the practice about just rotating that around, and you may not even say, not necessarily saying, "Oh, that's my fault, I take the blame," though you might. But it's just looking at that blaming idea and seeing that it's also you are participating in that whole situation, and it is really impossible to see first cause of anything. All evidence is partial. If we really looked at this realistically from the point of an understanding of absolute or relative truth, comes up, which is the Tibetan word that means all dressed up. We really looked at relative truth with a fundamental or understanding of the basis of fundamental truth, which is the absolute. You couldn't blame anybody for anyone, for anything. Even though they are relatively, in the last 20 minutes, they did this, they overlooked this, something went wrong, something wasn't put away, something wasn't turned off, something wasn't taken care of, someone's spaced it out, or so on and so forth. So the practice here of one of 59 slogans there that go from relative, from absolute bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, the absolute form of that, which one of those slogans would be a child of illusion. In other words, see all dharmas are dreams, to see that you can't find a reference point anywhere. There's several of them. I don't have them memorized. And you can read this. You can study this through the Judith Leaf has something on that on the Shambhala website, and also Trungpa Rinpoche's Taming the Mind. And what is the subtitle to that? Taming the Mind and Cultivating Loving Kindness, I think, something like that. Very good. I think that's in its probably half a dozen printings. And so some of those slogans, because they were written centuries ago from monks, some of those slogans may not fit or may not be as obvious, but that's one that actually is obvious in the sense of seeing that whatever is happening, that you could take some responsibility for that, either yourself as a way of just reversing and as a way of showing up. When you see that, you know how you feel if you do that, because the comment as you do that is, I really didn't do this. I'm really not to blame. So taking that attitude changes what happens in the mind, that natural, as I said before, knee-jerk reflex to point the finger. I didn't do it, they did. So it's a practice. It's not something that is necessarily has a fruitional quality to it, like, oh, finally I've accomplished that, I don't have to do that anymore. But it's something that you do to slowly work with your mind in a relative way. The combination of sitting on the cushion, strengthening the awareness, and then the relative practice, which this is one of them, in your everyday life, take the blame. So questions about that would probably make this go a lot deeper. Yes.
What does that look like? Could you give an example of what it would look like to drive all blames into one?
So the idea of driving all blames into one is whatever occurs in the way of any kind of negativity arising, where there's conventionally one would look and see, well, they did this. They were a blame. I mean, it's obvious that they did that. So to actually take that upon yourself, you may say it to them. You say, no, that's my fault. There's lots of ways in which that works. And everyone in here, if you reflect on it, you probably have a story yourself on how it's obvious who's to blame in the present moment in the cause and effect situation. But you realize there's a whole lot of things behind all of that. A whole lot of, you could go take it in another direction to be, you could say, well, you were distracted by something else and someone caused you to be distracted. So therefore you weren't able to fulfill your response. This is what the mind often does to try to get out of responsibility. Well, it's like I said the other day, to use myself as an example, you weren't notified of the yoga situation. And my immediately feeling was, well, it's been canceled so many times. So that's my way of kind of letting myself off the hook. But fundamentally, regardless of how that would show up, to say, well, that's my fault. I should have taken care of that. Just so if you went down deep into it, you would find all kinds of variables there where you can't really, when you trace it, you can't really find first cause for things. You can't really, yes.
In the way the Bodhisattva Shanadeva says, if somebody hits you with a stick, you don't blame the stick. And you can't really blame the person, but you can blame yourself for holding on to this body. Is this similar to what you're saying with driving out all blames into one?
I think there's an echo of that there. Of course, Shantideva is talking in the 9th century, is talking to monks, and people were really devoted to this, not just lay people or practitioners as we are that have jobs and practice, once a week or twice a week or every other day. So something like that. The things are fundamentally not separate. So you can't find, relatively you can find it. So what we do is we go into that relative situation and do what always reinforces our self-centeredness by just looking at relative truth. Well, of course they did that. We're not saying that you should go so far as to let somebody off the hook and not call somebody's bluff on something when they're not saying that, but fundamentally to see that there's really no, the other one that is not a slogan, but is also a saying, or it is a slogan, but not this particular collection, all dharmas are without blame. So anything that arises is really without a solid, separate thing that you can pinpoint and say, that's the reason for this. That being said, of course, there's all kinds of cause and effect going on. And so we need to use that also, as I'm going to be talking about at noon for the daily Dharma gathering, the last of the Four Noble Truths. Life is suffering, the cause, wanting things to be different. And then the last one, or the third one is that can come to an end. And what causes that to come to an end would be the path, or the path of meditation. So yes.
How do you not build up resentment or credential by taking the blame?
you may still build it up, but there's more awareness around that. You may see how you can't, like you might be doing that, and the second thought right behind that is, I don't really believe this. I really am not to blame. So I'll just, then the thinking would be, well, I'll just do this because I know this would be a good thing to do. I'm big enough that I can take the blame. So it gets very, as long as there's some kind of self-centeredness that is taken for granted behind everything we conventionally call ego, you're probably going to be continually looking for some reinforcement to that idea. And I'm the person who can take the blame. I'll take the blame on myself, that kind of situation. That being said, it is always about the awareness that sees that. If the awareness sees that, then eventually that can't continue to be fueled with that much awareness in the room, or with that big of a space for the awareness more.
How would you contrast it with, say, going into the absurd, like, oh, well, the pigeon, it's really the pigeon's fault. You didn't do it, I didn't do it, the pigeon.
Don't do that. That's how they contrast. You want more?
Yeah.
What?
Why not?
Because it's just a way out. It's a way, oh, we got that taken care of. Now we can move on to something else. It's not investigating. This is why we do sitting meditation, is so we strengthen an investigator, an observer. We strengthen that quality so we can see more deeply, more clearly the way in which we can keep confusing ourselves and confusing others, and wanting to be right, and wanting to be the person who becomes enlightened, or wanting to become the person who is the greatest bodhisattva who's ever lived.
How does driving all blames into one help us see that we can't actually see what the blame is?
Because you can't actually drive all blames into one. You can't actually succeed at that. I've succeeded at that. Now what's the next? And it's not like an accumulation of more.
What is blame?
So things occur that occurs that is, say, problematic or difficult. It's rather than looking at the difficulty, bringing the awareness into that, looking at that, and seeing what that fundamentally is. And it's actually ignoring or leaving the problem. Because if you looked at that too much, it might be too exposed. Leaving the problem and saying, well, it's because of them. Because of them. So it's ignoring what's happening rather than any kind of positionality on it either. But to blame oneself, we see that we can't quite do that. And then it causes us to continue to kind of see more clearly what the person who, say, was the original perpetrator of something, more clearly what was happening with them. Go ahead.
What's the difference between saying, oh, there's no one to blame, and driving the blame into yourself?
I think that saying there's no one to blame, I mean, it would depend. There are ways you could say that wouldn't do this, but I think the way you're asking it, I would have to respond by saying there's no one to blame is another way of vacating the scene. Well, it's a murder. Somebody did it. We're not sure who. I got other things to do. It's a murder. What's all the fuss? It's obviously, when maybe more investigation. I know I sometimes use crime scenes as a way of example of saying, be really thorough, be really forensic about any situation. Look really closely. Don't meddle with the evidence. And then because then what you begin to see is that the very evidence that you haven't meddled with is partial. But you're not going to be able to know that if some edges of it are crumbling and falling away because of somebody tramping around the edges with their preconceptions. Yes.
Our conditioning is present before we make contact with objects in a sense field. So how can we see what something fundamentally is if it's infused with our conditioning?
Well, you're already talking about it. Your awareness is showing, you're demonstrating that you're aware that it's infused with conditioning. So you're seeing relative truth on a deeper level. We see the relative truth deeper and deeper and deeper until something snaps. And when that snaps, and it might not be a snap, it might be a slow dribble.
When it
And
snaps,
that snaps is the belief that there's something separate from you. Go ahead.
when that snaps, will I no longer be a prisoner of my conditioning?
Well, there's no guarantees. That's a pretty strong. I'm not signing on that dotted line. But there's something to that. There's just to see that you're a prisoner begins to releases somewhat. Just like talking to inmates in a prison, which we've done a fair amount of over the years. If an inmate is ready to hear this is a very valuable thing that I have to say to people. I don't teach it in there. If I talk to them individually, I point out to them because I think it could be helpful, especially as someone who's going to be in there the rest of their life. So they've got your body, prisoner, but they really don't have your mind yet, unless they're drugging you up. But you have some freedom there. You should use that freedom. You should use that freedom to explore your consciousness, your mind, and see what's happening with you. And the other thing I sometimes say is people I meet on the outside prison sometimes are in more of a mental prison than people I meet in prison, who seem to be pretty, don't have a lot of strong preconceptions and have a lot more willingness to see what things are outside of their conditioning and their opinions about that. Whereas people on the outside sometimes live in a little box. You hardly can even converse with them. Yes,
Question from Sandra.
I know him.
He asked, can you expand on driving all blames into one and the awareness that we aren't one, but not separate?
I think you're saying it, Sandra, is that the awareness is there at the same time that you're doing it. That's why it's not just, taking the blame and as some kind of a performance. Oh, I'll just take the blame, or even a performance to yourself that you actually see. And the way your question is phrased is you're actually talking about it's in the answer to it is in your question, the way you're talking about it. Sheldon.
Why not just don't drive blame at all?
Okay. Let's make that a slogan.
It's a double negative.
Don't drive blame. Don't even do that. No how. So it seems we self-centered situation we find ourselves where we want some kind of a reference point. We're always scouting around for some referent. To not live there without any referent is quite often to be, well, from the ego point of view, you call it spaced out. But from the point of view of reality, not much is happening. And you don't mind that. So yes, don't blame at all would be, it's, what it is it isn't like it goes the other way where suddenly there's no blame. It's just that you see more clearly the causes and conditions that create a polarized situation that eventually, if you grasp onto either end of it, you're going to have warfare. So this is what we're doing. We're working on it at a level where if we begin to understand it, then the tendency to go into full-scale attack, blaming is much less. So yes, we don't blame at all. Do that one then. That'll be your slogan. Yes.
Is there a way to apply this on a broad world scale with everything, all the suffering that we see, nations? It's easy to point to governments.
Yeah.
And
What's your question?
I feel helpless. How do we?
That's pretty good. Feeling helpless is how ego feels when ego gets dipped in awareness a lot. Feel helpless. There's no, it's obvious. I have no say so about any of this. It's how we feel sometimes about our own neurosis, our own difficulty. We feel helpless because we keep trying to use whatever relative situations that we're told or taught or believe that will help us, and we begin to feel helpless. It will bring you to this cushion. It brings a lot of people to the cushion. Eventually, you just want to see what this is, and so then it becomes a path. But as far as the world, start where you are, as it says in Emma's book. Start where you are. Wherever you're at, start right there. Work on it. You see the warfare in the world. If there's still warfare here, if deep down in the middle of the night you've got this going on, it's completely a complete misunderstanding to go out with your mind thinking, well, everyone should be in peace. I need to go and show the leaders, and those leaders are operating out of a really intense belief in their ideas, their opinions, their viewpoints, their judgments, and very much in blame. Listen to the news. It's just a constant blaming back and forth. And sometimes it gets to such a high pitch that we just shut it off, or we laugh, or we blame those idiots. So start where you are. I mean, actually work on the warfare in the world is happening in a microcosm in your own body-mind complex. This is the war. This is the war. This is where you need to have, as they say, make peace. And I use the two-fist example. This is how it looks when you see it, when you first see it, and then the more you see it and the more you look, then one of those sides starts to drop away. But the other one, you have the momentum, and that's why it's difficult, because even though you're meditating, even though you're practicing, you still feel warlike. You still feel war going on. You still feel blaming going on. This is awareness. So we have to start somewhere. So we start right with our own blaming, our own warlike, our own attacking, our own finger pointing. Start there. And then if that gets clear, if that becomes more clarified, then there's a possibility that your whole karmic complex, or your whole life, because you're more clear, you're less embroiled in some kind of a bunch of knots of opinions, ideas, and judgments, and hope and fear. What if I do this? What if I should I with 15 forks in the road everywhere and not knowing what to do? Then you're just clear. Then if an opportunity to actually fundamentally help someone, it might be the senator from Nebraska, whom you meet on a train. If there's some way that you are begin to interface with the rest of your world, there might be some way when you can have a little bit of input on the level of helping someone be more sane, or approach their life in a different way. Chances are, when I say chances, I don't really know, but probably not too much of that's going to happen. It's about you becoming more sane. Yes.
This process seems so slow compared to the needs of the world.
Well, it's slow compared to that, but this is what it's what we're always doing, is comparing. But this process, we want to do a comparison. Let's do this process compared to 100 million years. That's nothing. Any number that I can name is relative, but it's just a big relative. So our little viewpoint from, in my case, 74, almost 75 years, I have just so much here that I can remember. That's what I'm using to look at everything. But it's much bigger than this. And no, I have no proof. But it is. Go ahead.
So what is our responsibility then?
Responsibility, the ability to respond is to respond to something. It doesn't mean that you're to blame. It means that you respond to it. And the way I talk about it all the time, is don't look away from anything. And when you're looking at something, don't add on your ideas, your opinions, which this is what happens. And don't add on or apply your judgments or evaluations, which is like, you know, judging it, whatever, and don't distract yourself or look away. And that's responding. Because then if you do that, then if your intention is good and you have the intention to fundamentally help yourself and help others, then if there is an opening to do that in a relative way, then you can see to do it. And you can also see that, no, there is no opening here. And that's when why I say don't meddle. Quite often meddling comes out of impatience. We can't stand that things aren't changing and they aren't moving at the speed we want. And why do I feel this way? Why are people acting like this? I want to get in there and shuffle things around. It's good to wait. It's good to wait, even though you could step in and change something. It's good to wait for a while and just see exactly what is that. Is that all about me wanting to have control over something so I feel better and more powerful? Or is it a fundamental interest or caring about that situation itself that would fundamentally serve to make that more healthy, happy, peaceful, considerate, and so on? Yes.
Would you, if it was a genuine response, would you be able to tell the difference?
I mean, if you're genuinely responding to something?
Yeah, maybe you're not waiting. It just, this happens and this happens. And in retrospect,
That sounds good. I like that one. I like the first one. What was that? This happens and this happens. I like that.
yeah.
I'm totally on board with that.
But then you're saying,
But that's not impulsiveness. That's spontaneity.
right.
Impulsive. No, don't say right too quick.
Sorry. Sir.
Don't apologize.
Oh.
Do you follow me? The difference between impulsiveness is being kind of antsy and I'm just going to have to do. I got to do this. I've had enough of this waiting around. But more impulsive kind of thing, or I better get this before it goes away. But spontaneity is just you're here and you're relaxed. You see the situation move and move this way and move this way, and you join in. It's kind of like having a sense of humor with no laughter. Just very, very much in harmony with what's arising and what's falling. Other people may not see any spontaneity at all. They just see movement. They don't necessarily see any agenda on your part.
But you said to wait and then, you know, see if it's this or that. And I feel
It's
like,
just a way of talking about it.
but if you're being spontaneous and genuine, I feel like it'd be really hard in retrospect to see really what was occurring.
Yeah, you wouldn't know. But if the self-centeredness is dialed way back, which it would be if you do enough of this practice, it gets dialed back. Maybe not with a lot of comfort, but if the self-centeredness is less and less and less, then the ability to evaluate whether you're being spontaneous or not is less and less. But you don't mind. You don't mind not knowing whether you're spontaneous or not. That's other people's problems, not yours. Do you follow me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Is don't do anything being responsible?
Well, it can be. I mean, a lot of times when I say don't do anything unless you have to, I'm saying all I'm really saying is wait, hold back a little bit before you jump on something. Wait and see how it shows up all together. See if there's other parts of it that by jumping on that based on fear or hope, I better get on that. I better buy a lottery ticket. Look how many numbers are out there. What if I don't buy it? Somebody's got to win. Might as well be, oh, lucky me. So don't do it and not doing anything. The way I'm characterizing it anyway is to wait, is to see. Like in the practice shows up a lot here. We some things we didn't come in and just say, this is what we're going to do. This is our practice and these are the forms. And we just imported those wholesale from Japan. This is what we do. No, things keep changing in here based on how I see it and my interaction with temple residents and what's happening with them, my interaction with people coming in here and talking, things change slightly. So I'm kind of a don't do anything mode, but that doesn't mean I'm not watching everything. You know, in other words, seeing what's happening. If you're not particularly trying to find who's right, who's wrong, what I should do, what I shouldn't do, you're not thinking in all that polarity, then you're just here. You're just kind of hanging out. And then whatever is moving back and forth, then you see, well, maybe this could be moved a little bit. Like I will watch somebody do the prostration, or I would listen to somebody do the, not that my way is the correct way. The Japanese monk could come in here and just say, just silly. You guys aren't Japanese. And I would say, I know. But I'd say you could inventory this or evaluate it in all kinds of ways. But I might watch someone function in a certain way that I think is kind of, could be, that form could be changed somewhat, but I might watch them do it for a long time before I'll say anything about it. Excuse me, it's not because I'm forgetting it. So don't go there. More?
Where does the shift occur from? It seems like generally we all feel like being responsible is having to take actions about things, like that things we need to do, things we need to take care of things.
That's a good point. Yeah, there's a general consensus is be responsible, get in there and get a job.
But it kind of sounds like there needs to be a shift to a point where that being responsible actually just needs to look at what's going on and wait to see what's happening. To be let me put it in the simplest way I can say it, to be an adult. Really not function out of open fear. Function as if everyone's your child. So that you can be an adult. You can look. It's just a way of talking about it. Say, and to be responsible means you're not going to jump on it with an opinion right away. Passion. You're not going to judge it too quickly just based on the first three aspects or characteristics of that situation that arise. Well, we know those guys are Chinese. What do you expect? No, then you're gone. That kind of thing. Or the other one is that doesn't concern me. Whatever's arising, there might be difficulty or pain or stress or whatever, but well, that's those guys. You might not even say that. You might just not even know you're looking away. That's part of ignorance, why it's so hard to understand or see that, because you don't really know that you're looking away. It's like you're standing, not you particularly, but anybody. You're standing, say, in the hallway out here. For instance, you're standing in the hallway, and somebody walks by you with a whole load of stuff, and they walk up to a door, and you watch them do that. And they may even go, and then go, oh, that's all right, I can do it myself. Just a way of ignoring. That's a real obvious way, but that happens on all different kinds of levels all over the place. How do I know about it? I do it. I do it. Maybe a little less now than I used to, but it still occurs. Michael.
Can you contrast blaming and naming?
You philosophers, I'm telling you. Okay. Blaming, spelled with a B. Naming. I think naming, blaming is actually pointing at something and using the whole idea of cause and effect and jumping on board with that and saying this is at fault, this happened, and this is why, and blaming it with some kind of adversarial kind of thing going on, perhaps. And naming could be any number of things. I mean, that's not meant to be humorous, but Ian is the only one that got the joke.
It's
Or was that-
an interesting question.
It is an interesting question. Would you like to answer it?
Too many answers.
Yeah. That's a good way of saying it. There are too many answers.
Yes.
I have a question for Betty, and we're just about,
Okay.
Meeting
Yeah, we have to stop because we're going to have the daily Dharma gathering at noon. Yes.
Betty, it's a two-part question.
Study call.
Yes. She asked, first of all, is blame a moral judgment? And to follow that up, if so, is the admonition to take responsibility and quit judging?
Mm. So I follow what you're saying, Betty, but I would say that it's all of what you're saying there is, you know, you're clear about that. But what I would say is bring awareness to that. Let your awareness sort out all the different particles and all the little pieces of that, rather than come with some kind of another judgment on top of the other judgments. So probably not the kind of answer you're looking for. I like to say awareness needs to have priority, and when awareness has priority, you may not have a good reference point going on, like who did what and why did, and isn't saying don't blame or blame this way or blame yourself. It's taking something that is happening. The energy of blaming is just as the image we use is a knee jerk. Anything happens, somebody gets praise or blame. We do it all day long. And it's bringing awareness to that. And one of the ways you can bring awareness to that is to switch them. To anytime anything happens, as soon as you see regardless of who is the perpetrator, is just switch them around and take that. How does that feel to be responsible for what's happening? This actually is using relative situation of cause and effect and our preconceptions about that to, you might say, sneak up on absolute truth. To actually take the polarity and switch it the other way. And at some point there may be some kind of an aha about the interdependency of everything. Phenomena is completely interdependent. Can't escape it. You can't. When you escape it, you just emphasize, and that's where wars come from. People trying to be on the side of the right. We're the ones who are right. They're the ones who are. We feel so right that we're willing to bomb people. Has it ever struck you that kind of strange that it's okay to bomb soldiers but not civilians? Something about some kind of logic about, like the laws of warfare. So what? Shouldn't there just be a law that there's no war? I mean, that might be going too far. I understand. We should drive all blames into Sokuzan. Who laughed?
Not me, sir.
So final question, any from anyone?
Not here.
Not here. Anyone out here? And then we have to stop for the daily Dharma gathering. It starts in 15 minutes. Okay, I'm sorry I couldn't make that more clear. I mean it. I feel fuzzy about it myself.
Are you doing that? Taking the blame?
No. Does it look like I'm taking the blame? Watch it. You got my head. Actually, drive all blames into Sokuzan.
How do you do that, sir?
Yeah, love.
Okay, we're good. Okay.
We'll dedicate the merit.
Thank you, Betty and Sandra also. Anyone else join us?
Well, there were 6 viewers, but I don't know who's.
And the other 4 viewers who shall remain nameless.
We appreciate when you turn the computer. For a while, we're just dedicating the merit to your crotch.
Yeah. It's not mine.
May the miracles penetrate to all places so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho San Shi 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 Song Gu Sa Mo Go sa moko ja the 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita,